Good afternoon. Welcome to it's a very rainy Monday here in Leeds. Good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar about NACE's Curriculum Audit. My name is Chris Shepherd. I'm NACE's Challenge and Curriculum Development Director and the Executive Head Teacher of 2 primary schools in Bradford. And I'll be taking you through this webinar this afternoon. Now, like most of the people here, I'm involved in ensuring that our curriculum, our design is fit for purpose and meets the needs of our more able, as most school teachers are at the moment, as most school leaders are. And in this respect, NACE's Curriculum Audit tool is extremely welcome, and it's been a very useful tool to support curriculum design and implementation, and as such, whole school improvement. So during the session today, please put any questions that you have either into the Q&A area or into the chat box, and then I'm going to leave some time at the end for us to go through those. And before I forget, there will also be a link to the feedback survey at the end that will come up in the chat. So please engage with that as well. I'm just going to check that I've got my timer going because I want to stick to time. So those of you who know anything about NACE will know that it's an independent charity who works with schools right across the education sector. And its overarching mission is to improve provision for more able learners, but also to impact on the levels of challenge for all learners, and by doing so, to lead to whole school improvement and raise standards in provision for all. And NACE has over 40 years of experience in the field and offers support across all sectors, phases, contexts, and stages of development. So we're here for you as practitioners in school. Now, again, those of you who are new to NACE might not know that we are driven by 7 core principles, and these underpin all of our work. And what I will do today is show you the 2 that are particularly pertinent to the use of the curriculum audit. So I've pulled out these 2, and these are the 2 core principles that are at the foundation of NACE's curriculum audit. Now, in curriculum design and implementation, the needs of the more able are often overlooked. But at NACE, we believe that if we keep the needs of the more able central to this process, then we'll have a curriculum that not only addresses their needs, but also provides better for all learners. And you can see there that first NACE core principle, which says that providing for more able learners is not about labelling, but about creating a curriculum and learning opportunities which allow all children to flourish. But by having the more able at the heart of our curriculum design, we'll actually impact on that for every single learner. So that first question that I've put there for us to consider really is, does our curriculum create learning opportunities which allow our more able learners to flourish whilst we provide challenge for all? And that's something we need to have sitting at the heart of whatever we do in terms of curriculum design and implementation. Now, the other NACE core principle that you can see on the slide there is about addressing the needs of more able, raising the achievement for a much wider group of learners. So we also need to keep that at central to our practice. And that's what the curriculum audit tool does. It thinks about curriculum design, implementation, and its impact from the point of view of more able learners, but also with that whole underlying aim of raising the levels of challenge for all learners. I'll just give you a second to have a look at these 2 quotes. So the bit on the left there is from Amanda Spielman. And what she's saying there is that if we have a school curriculum that's designed to just push children through mark schemes or learning hoops, rather than thinking about the depth at which they learn things, we will end up with learners, we'll end up with young people who will struggle later in life. And the bit on the right is actually from the education inspection framework, but it chimes really well with Estin's work as well around curriculum development. and the new Welsh curriculum. And what it's saying is really that we need to have a curriculum that's coherently planned, but that is ambitious for all of its pupils. And that is a theme that runs through the new curriculum for Wales. But also that the work that we give to pupils is demanding and consistently matches the curriculum aims. There's the importance there as well, as you can see, of having expert knowledge for teachers, and then ensuring that we embed those key concepts in pupils' long-term memory. So the education inspection framework, for example, has really raised the bar in its scrutiny of the substance of education and how well all pupils experience a challenging, knowledge-rich curriculum. Now, Ofsted are looking for a deep and rich curriculum offer that does more than ensure the pupils are engaged in their learning, but instead it creates opportunities for a deeper and richer content that will stretch and challenge and provide a range of different contexts within which pupils can work outside of what their normal experience is. And Estyn in Wales, likewise, are looking for ambition and challenge for all learners. So the starting point is to ensure that our curriculum design is sufficiently ambitious for the most able pupils, whilst creating opportunities for the nurture of talent and ability. So teachers also need to have the skills and pedagogical knowledge to teach well. And that's something that has come through not just the latest Ofsted reports and reviews into different subjects, but also through the work of Estyn. So in terms of Ofsted, the outstanding descriptors in terms of personal development emphasize the requirement for an enriched curriculum. So one of the quotes is that opportunities for pupils to develop their talents and interests are of exceptional quality. So there needs to be that interplay between challenge, opportunity, and personal development. And in developing the NACE Curriculum Audit, those are the considerations that are running throughout it that hopefully you'll see. Okay then, so this presentation will introduce the curriculum audit and think about how schools can use it to support your discussion around curriculum quality and design in order to get a really challenging and ambitious curriculum. And you can see here some key thoughts. So again, I'll just give you a second to have a look at that yourselves. So what's really interesting, I think, about that first statement is that if we have universally high expectations within our school and that relentless ambition to challenge all pupils, and we constantly ask ourselves as practitioners some really searching questions about how we are meeting the needs of our more able and our potentially more able pupils, we're likely to be much more successful and inclusive as a school. And when we're talking about challenge, that involves not just the pedagogy that we use, but the curriculum as a whole. Have we developed a curriculum in terms of its coverage, but in terms of the way that it's sequenced and the way that learning is assessed, that actually provides real challenge from the start? And have we thought about how that curriculum impacts on pupils' learning, but also in terms of their personal development? And again, this is what we've tried to build into our curriculum audit for you, which I think, very successfully will help you to provide a curriculum at that level. Okay, so what is it then? Well, in the NACE Curriculum Audit, there are 26 descriptors altogether in the framework. And in terms of intent, implementation, and impact. So it breaks those up into those three areas, and it gives you some really clear descriptors to help guide your practice, some really key questions to help you develop your curriculum intent, your implementation, and your impact. So initially, it's a quality framework that's actually based on the Ofsted set of curriculum indicators to support you in evaluating the quality of your curriculum. And I think it works really well from the point of view of a whole school view. So if you look at this with the whole staff to see what they think your curriculum is all about and use it as a self-evaluation tool from that point of view. But it also works well, as you can see from that third bullet point down, in terms of using it with departments or subject leaders to see what they think from their own point of view as a subject leader or as a department, or even as a classroom teacher. If they carry out the self-review element of the curriculum audit, does it help them to see where the gaps are potentially, where the strengths are within their own practice as regards More Able and the way that their own curriculum has been designed? So it's through the lens of the More Able, but what it's really doing is showing you, helping you to come to a decision about whether your curriculum is ambitious enough and whether there's sufficient challenge there for all learners. So as I said, it's a very, very practical, flexible tool which can be used in stages to inform your action planning. Once you've used it as a review tool, it will help you to identify some key areas that you as a school need to work on. And then you can prioritize those from there. And so it explores the match between what you've got planned in terms of your curriculum and what's actually happening. So the intent compared to the implementation. Because as we know, often what we want, what it says on the tin, isn't exactly what we get from our curriculum. And what this audit tool is allow you to see, well, is my intent clear? And then does that marry with what with the pedagogy that we're using, the way that the curriculum is sequenced and so on, i.e. the implementation. And there is a version for Wales which is built around schools preparing for the new Welsh curriculum as well as them evaluating their current curriculum, and that's available in both an English medium but also Welsh. And please remember, at any point, if there are any questions at all, please put them into the chat so that I can respond to them when we stop for questions. Okay, what I've put here is just an overview of some curriculum quality factors that have been identified through research. And these themes that we're going to look at in a moment are evident in the curriculum work of Mary Myatt, and they were also identified in the research conducted by Ofsted, as well as through Estin. The descriptors move through intent and implementation to impact and in the audit. And these are the factors which Ofsted research said were important when looking at and discussing curriculum quality. And if you look at the visits to outstanding schools and the subject visits for things like history and science and geography, you'll find that these qualities that have been explored, they've been picked up on by the inspectors in those schools, especially in terms of progression, subject knowledge, and the distributed curriculum. And the way that this is framed is through the intelligent use of assessment to inform curriculum design. And that's a big one that flows through lots of the inspections that have taken place and lots of the research into effective subject delivery in schools and effective sequencing of the curriculum. So in terms of the curriculum quality factors identified by the research, as we can see here, what's been important is the importance of subject as individual disciplines. Now, this isn't to discount what Wales are doing around those subject areas or those areas of learning, but it's still important for pupils to understand that a subject discipline in its own right, you know, what makes a good geographer, what's an outstanding learning behaviour in terms of a historian and so on. So that's something that's threaded through the audit for you to pull on to see if that's actually the case in your school. One of the other elements that you'll see threaded throughout it is the use of the curriculum to address disadvantage and provide equality of opportunity. So the audit asks some really key questions to help guide your practice in this area and gets you to think about whether your curriculum really does address disadvantage and provide that equality. It also supports the idea of regular curriculum review, because when you're using the audit, that's what you're doing. And then using the curriculum as a progression model, another strand that was pulled out in terms of good practice from the research into curriculum. And you can see again, that's a clear thread, I like to say a golden thread, that's running throughout the curriculum audit. And again, the intelligent use of assessment to inform curriculum design. Now, NACE's assessment audit has been developed from that. So although in the curriculum audit, you've got a big strand on assessment, if that's an area for your school to work on, the NACE assessment audit can then be used as another layer to go even deeper into that particular strand of your practice. And that can be used to complement the curriculum audit. And then in terms of the research, again, one of the key strands was the importance of the retrieval of core knowledge being baked into the curriculum. Now, when you look at the curriculum audit, you'll see that, again, that flows throughout. What we've done is we've asked you some key questions, giving you some examples of key bits of evidence that you might use to show that that's actually happening throughout your curriculum, both in terms of the pedagogy, i.e. the implementation, but also in the way that your curriculum is designed, what's its intent. And again, the other part of that is leadership. Is responsibility for the leadership of your curriculum distributed across the school? Or is it, again, left in the hands of just a couple of people? And what the audit tool does is, again, pull on that thread and give you some key questions that you need to ask yourselves, especially in terms of the leadership of the more able and the oversight that that more able lead has of practice within all subjects. And likewise, the responsibility that subject leaders have for ensuring that the more able are appropriately supported. Okay, I'm just going to keep an eye on the time, make sure we're okay, we're fine. Okay, so this is your first look, really, for those of you who haven't got the audit. This is an example of what it looks like. So if you have curriculum leaders who are constructing endpoints, but they haven't really thought about the most able, you really have lost an opportunity, because we can't make assumptions that they're being challenged. We might just say, oh, this is what we want at the end, but we haven't looked at how we're going to get there through our curriculum design. And data alone won't tell us whether the curriculum is right for our more able. We need to consider whether we might be putting a ceiling on achievement. So again, we need to consider the type of assessment that we're using that helps us with that. Are our option choices narrow, or are they wide enough and enriching enough to provide that appropriate level of support for our more able? And is there a lack of challenge in the way that we are delivering our curriculum, but also in the way that we've designed it? So if we're talking about prior learning, for example, being important in terms of our curriculum, are we checking that some pupils aren't sitting through concepts that they firmly grasped already? Because we know that a characteristic of the more able, for example, is that they don't need the same amount of repetition. And some able pupils have very good memory capacity. So have we thought about that in terms of our intent for our curriculum and then in terms of the design? So if we have a look here then, as I say, this is your first look, and you can see that this is the intent, or some of sections from the intent area, and you've got some key criteria there on your left. So for example, there's a clear and coherent rationale for the curriculum design. The rationale and aims of the curriculum design are shared across the school and fully understood by all, which I think are fairly standard questions for us to consider. But then what the audit tool has done is to frame questions around those key criteria that will help you to look at whether your practice for the more able, and by default challenge for all, is effective. So as you can see there, does the rationale include a clear account of how the needs of more able learners will be met in curriculum design? Does the rationale explain how the endpoints towards which the curriculum is building are sufficiently ambitious for more able or exceptionally able learners, and so on. And what you can do is you can rate yourself in terms of your whole school practice or your particular subject area or your curriculum area against each of the criteria, and you can see the rating system explained there on the slide. But as I said, what's useful about these is to give these questions to each teacher or subject area individually and see whether their view chimes with what leaders think about their curriculum. But again, as I say, what's brilliant about it is that it will allow you to build a solid and a strong understanding of what needs to happen in your school, where you actually are in terms of your curriculum practice, but what happens next. And you can see there that I've given you 2 more examples from the intent section. So we've got 1C and 1D there. Curriculum leaders show an understanding of important concepts related to curriculum design, such as knowledge, progression, and sequencing of concepts. And then on the right-hand side, where you've got that narrative, we've got some key questions again, such as how well can leaders articulate how curriculum planning and schemes of work take account of learners who are already working well in advance of their peers and how well they might learn at a faster rate. So have those considerations been made in terms of your curriculum development? Now, what you're doing with your leaders through discussion is building up that solid understanding of the constituents of a quality framework for your curriculum development. But as we know, any good self-evaluation needs real honesty and it needs real evidence. So when you're using the curriculum audit, the important thing is to rate yourselves honestly according to those different criteria, but also to encourage everybody to keep notes in that space. If I just go back a slide to let you see, you can see it there, there's an area for school notes. If you get everybody to actually comment on what their justification is for their score, why have they scored their practice or what they believe is the school's practice, their school's curriculum in relation to that particular descriptor as they have, because you need that justification in order to then pull apart what needs to happen as a school. Okay, so as I say, what I've shared with you there are 4 of 1 section of the implementation criteria, sorry, the intent criteria that you can see. So you've got 3 sections, as I said, intent, implementation, and impact. Those 4 areas there were from the intent section. So now this is similarly what the implementation section would look like. Now, as I've said earlier, as you know, we can have the most wonderful intentions for our curriculum, but it's how that translates into implementation that's really important. In other words, what happens in the classroom and beyond? And that's the key. What are the strategies that are being used by staff, their subject knowledge, the pedagogy, and the way that the curriculum is planned to allow real progression? All these questions are essential for us to consider. And what we're doing with the curriculum audit is looking at those questions through the lens of the more able. And then after that, what we'll do is we'll look at the impact that each of those have. So again, as I said, there are 5 key criteria in the audit and 15 subsections within those in this particular section, in the implementation section. And they will guide your effective curriculum implementation. So let's just have a look at 2 of these then that we can see on the screen in front of us. So for example, one of the criteria is that subject leaders at all levels have clear roles and responsibilities in relation to curriculum design and delivery. And then what the audit's done is picked out a really key question in terms of more able. So does the more able coordinator have a defined role and set of responsibilities to support the implementation of high quality curriculum for more able learners? So are they involved in overseeing what every subject leader has planned for our more able. And that's absolutely key, because sometimes in schools, those approaches can be very disjointed. The work of the more able lead can be totally disjointed from the work of a curriculum area lead or a head of department. And what this audit is doing is bringing all that together for you. As you can see from another section, a snip that I've included there, you've got curriculum resources mentioned. So again, if you look on the right-hand side, you can see how well do curriculum resources, including textbooks, meet the needs of more able learners and provide good stretch and challenge. Does the selection of resources enable more able learners to be inducted into the language which defines each subject in its own right? So are we introducing our more able learners to language that a historian would use, or that a geographer would use, or that's used by an artist? Is that threaded through our curriculum for those subjects, and has it been considered? Because often what you find in schools is that it hasn't. You know, again, because it's very disjointed, we think of the more able on the one hand and the curriculum on another. So using the audit in this regard will help tie everything up, and it will give you a view as to whether your curriculum is truly challenging, not just in terms of its ambition, but in terms of what it actually provides for more able learners. Okay, I'll move on. So here you've got another snip of a section from the implementation section. And you've got, this is all about the breadth and depth. So how are your teachers teaching for deeper learning? How are you enabling young people to be active meaning makers and able to make connections and transfer their learning? And you'll see a lot about this in the work of McTighe and Silver in Teaching for Deeper Learning, where they look into this in great detail. And what the curriculum audit has done is, again, asked you those key questions that help you to see to what extent this is happening in your school. So let's just take a couple of these here that you can see. So the first one, I'm going to use the second point down there on the left. How well does subject design enable more able learners to make links across subjects and gain secure conceptual understanding? We talk often in very simplistic terms in schools about our curriculum having real cross-curricular links, but what the audit is doing here is getting you to think about that in great detail and think about whether those links are strong, whether they're meaningful, and whether they are actually allowing our more able learners to develop that really rich idea and that conceptual understanding of ideas and the links between them. So have your subject leaders developed a curriculum that does have those links really explicit within it, that are meaningful and strong and not just contrived? And again, with that last question there on the left, how well does subject design take account of well-designed enrichment as a means of extending the knowledge, skills and understanding of more able learners? So again, what you can see in the audit is that idea of, is enrichment really happening? And that doesn't mean just after school or beyond the school day activities. It's talking about whether the curriculum in itself and the way that it's delivered in the classroom has enrichment built into it. Are there opportunities for your students to dig down deeper into subjects? And what the audit does here is it gives you some key bits of evidence that you might use to show whether that's actually happening or not. Then on the right there, you've got some more areas from the implementation section. So one of them is, there is a model of curriculum progression for every subject. But in terms of looking at that through a lens of the more able and challenge, do subject curriculum progression plans take account of the needs for more able and exceptionally able learners who are working at an advanced level for their age? Has the school thought about that? Have the subject leaders thought about those students that will move faster through a particular area or a subject, and has provision been put into the curriculum for that? So again, it's that constant guiding you to think about those areas of curriculum development which are really important, but that you might not have considered before from the point of view of a more able learner. And again, in that last one, which is about curriculum mapping, in that very last point there, are cross-curricular opportunities rigorously planned and purposeful? And that links back to what I said a couple of minutes ago. Are they meaningful? And have they been deliberately planned to make sure that learning is as rich as it can be for all learners, and particularly for the more able, in terms of that planned sequence of knowledge and skills? Okay, just keeping a constant check on the time. Right, so moving on then to the impact. So what I've done there with the other two sections is given you some snips from the curriculum audit itself to give you an idea of the depth at which that curriculum audit allows you to explore your intent for the curriculum, but also your implementation of it. So this is the impact section, and this is a snip from there, because as we know, it's our analysis of the impact in terms of our curriculum that's going to tell us whether our curriculum really is doing what it says on the tin. So are those curriculum intentions being met, and how do we actually know? And your evidence for this must be absolutely wide-ranging. So it includes things like work scrutiny. It obviously includes things like a range of data, but it's that ongoing assessment, that formative assessment. And again, as I said, this is where the curriculum the NACE assessment audit also comes into its own, because again, it takes you for a deeper dive into that. So if we look at just from the point of view of this one section from the impact on the curriculum audit, you can see here we've got a key question on the left, or a key statement. The curriculum is successfully implemented to ensure progression in knowledge. Pupils successfully learn the curriculum. Seems fairly straightforward, but really what we need to do to delve down into that to make sure that's really happening is to ask ourselves some key questions, which you can see on the right. So for example, do more able learners develop very detailed knowledge and advanced level skills, securing high achievement and the pathway to ambitious future career paths? Can we hand on heart say that that is what our curriculum is providing for our more able learners? Or are we just sort of being carried along on a wave of good intentions without really looking at the impact for our more able learners themselves? So again, our action points from this would lead to a really strong strategic action plan, which you can then work on as a school or as individuals. So again, if we look down to the next bit, so how well do lesson observations or work scrutiny or learner discussion or data let you know that children and students going right through to sixth form and beyond know more, remember more, and are able to do more at a level of advancement typically beyond that of their peers in their own classrooms, in their own schools, but also at a national level as well? How well do our lesson observations look for those things? So again, that key question alone, you can imagine it allowing you to branch off in lots of different areas of action in school. How often does your lesson observation and your work scrutiny and all your other evidence that you might collect provide you with excellent detailed knowledge and skills in terms of, the pupil's excellent detailed knowledge of learning and skills? How much is it giving you evidence of that? How much is your lesson observation, are your lesson observations showing you that pupils are producing work of a consistently high quality, not just in terms of volume, but in terms of the depth of pupils' understanding? So in other words, are our evidence collection processes strong enough in terms of those outcomes for more able learners. And what the audit is doing is helping us to work out whether that's actually the case. And what you could obviously do with the audit is you can take, sorry, I've clicked the wrong button there. What we can do with the audit is we can take one section. For example, we could just take implementation if we think that's an area of focus for our schools, or we could start with a review of the impact of our curriculum from the point of view of the more able and challenge for all, and work on that alone. We could carry out a self-evaluation just using that section of the audit, or we can audit the whole school provision from the point of view of intent, implementation and impact, and then decide from there what it is that we want to work on first. Is it an element of each, or is it, oh, well, I can see from here that our intent is fine, but we're not seeing that realised in terms of what's happening in the classroom. So you can see that the audit will work in many different ways. Okay, right, just moving on. So, as I've said, assessment is a theme that's captured within the curriculum audit in the implementation section, because we know, don't we, that effective assessment policies and practices and processes are vital if we are to ensure that information is being committed to learners' long-term memory, particularly in terms of the more able. And that assessment needs to be helping the ambitious curriculum and its goals to be achieved. So NACE have now developed an assessment audit which can be used alongside the curriculum audit to review and evaluate the extent to which assessment across your curriculum and across the school supports the highest quality education for the more able and challenge for all. So that's just a heads up really about this audit. You can see there that it's available both to members at a reduced rate and also to non-members, but it does work really well alongside the curriculum audit for those schools who are currently looking at where their assessment lies in terms of whether it's rigorous enough to capture the curriculum outcomes and impact for the more able, and whether it actually guides deeper learning, the assessment processes themselves. Are they helping to enhance the quality of learning in school? So again, a really effective school tool for you to use alongside the curriculum audit. As you can see here, in terms of the audit itself, it is free. The curriculum audit is free to NACE members. It is payable for non-members. And you can also buy a supporting half-day consultancy to use in school to help you implement and embed that audit and support you with its use. And then you can see from that slide that there are different ways of reaching and downloading that information, or you can just order it on the NACE website. And you can also see there in the orange part that there is additional consultancy available in terms of bespoke CPD, coaching and mentoring, and they're also available in terms of generic, more able practice in school, but also in terms of the curriculum audit. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'm ahead of time. So what I'll do is I'm going to just whiz through the next slide for you. We will come back to the any questions in a moment, sorry. But what I want you to do is just have a look at this one in terms of if you've got any questions following this webinar about any aspect of NACE's work, that these are the different ways in which you can get in touch with us. So there's the information at nace.co.uk, which is our email address, the info at. Then you've got the Twitter account, there's a NACE Facebook account, and then you've got LinkedIn is another way of getting hold of us. And one of the other ways in which NACE will support you is the Ask NACE offer, where you can book a call with the NACE associate to talk through a specific area that you're working on in school or that you want support and guidance with. And that can be any area, any aspect of more able practice. Okay, let me just check on the time, make sure I'm okay. Yeah, we're fine. Right. Now, before we go on to questions, just want you to have a think about these. Give you a second to have a read of those. So if we think about again, it's Amanda again on the left, Amanda Spielman. This is one of her quotes, and I absolutely love this one. And this, for me, a high quality education built around a rich curriculum is a matter of social justice. And I feel as practitioners who are focused on the needs of the more able, this is something that really should be resonating with us. That often we develop a curriculum and we are rightly, we're thinking about all our learners in school, but as I said right at the beginning, sometimes our more able get overlooked. The rich curriculum needs to apply to our more able, and it is a matter of social justice for them. It's part of our moral purpose that we give those more able pupils what they need in terms of a rich curriculum offer, both in terms of our intent for that curriculum, but also in terms of the implementation of it, what we actually provide, its content, the way we deliver it, the way we sequence it, the way we assess it, and then the impact of that curriculum. If we're not thinking about the curriculum from the point of view of our more able, I honestly believe that hand on heart, we're not doing our jobs, but also we are not going to end up with an ambitious curriculum for all learners. We're not going to have a curriculum of challenge for all. And again, if you can see there, I think is perfectly pertinent to the English curriculum as well, which is a quote from Estin, that what they found in their recent review of schools that were implementing their new curriculum was that effective leaders review honestly how their current school curriculum is aligned with the four purposes. And I would say that in England, likewise, effective leaders review honestly how their current school curriculum is aligned with the needs of more able learners. We need to be constantly reviewing our curriculum to see that it's meeting the needs of every child and is really ambitious and has high levels of challenge built within it. So again, I just thought there were some key messages there that apply to all of us. Right, so those would be the thoughts that I would suggest that you take away with you for the day. So what I'll do now is I'll go back to this slide and over to you. I think I'm about 3 minutes ahead of myself, which is quite miraculous for me. And we will see what questions have appeared. Now, Karen, do you want me to just access them myself? I can see some of them. Oh,
yes, that'll be fine. There's a couple in there already.
I've got a question. So can you, the rest of you, please be putting any questions. It doesn't matter. Any question. No question is too small or too big. We'll give it a go. I've got a question here about ISI inspections. Does this match with independent schools inspections? Now, I have to be honest, that's from Rebecca. Thanks, Rebecca, for that question. My experience is of independent schools is firsthand from my own children, but also from my husband working in one. So I feel as if I don't work in one, but I can give you what I would believe is an honest answer, which is yes, I would believe that my experience so far of independent schools inspections is that they are looking for a curriculum that is extremely ambitious, and they would be looking to see that it is sequenced effectively, that you've got a strong intent, first of all, in terms of what you want for your pupils in the independent sector. And it is that ambitious in terms of your intent. And within that, you would be expecting schools to have thought about what the needs of the most able were in their schools and how their curriculum provides opportunities, not just for those who've been identified as more able, but for pupils to become more able to show themselves as having an ability. So if we have a curriculum that doesn't challenge and isn't ambitious in the way that it's planned, how will other abilities and talents come to light? So from my experience of hearing about speaking to independent schools inspectors, that would be one thing that they're looking for, that ambition in terms of your intent. And the other one is in the sequencing of the curriculum. Has progression been built into it from the point of view of what happens with those pupils who are moving through the usual curriculum offer faster than other pupils? Has that been thought about? Is there progression for them, and is that really clear? And thirdly, it's in terms of the enrichment that's happening for those pupils within lessons. So one of my experiences recently, speaking to an independent school leader that had just been through an inspection, was that they hadn't expected the questioning from the inspector to be so deep in terms of what's happening in lessons for pupil, where's the opportunity for you more able to work independently once they finished a set task? There's my timer. Where are the opportunities for them to have that enrichment in terms of going deeper into a subject? And they had expected the school, unfortunately the school hadn't thought about this because they hadn't been using the curriculum audit, but they had expected the school to have thought about that in advance and be able to answer that question as to what that enrichment looks like within a particular lesson. So where is it that the pupils are being allowed to dig deeper or being taken deeper by the teacher, way beyond what an exam syllabus, for example, would expect? And so from my point of view, from what I've heard already, this audit chimes perfectly with that and would stand any independent school, I believe, in really good stead in responding to the needs of an inspection from the ISI. So I hope, Rebecca, that's helped with the answer. Feel free to put further comments or questions into the box if it hasn't. Oh, that's a thank you. Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, and at the end, Karen says, please don't forget we've got another question. So we've got another question here. Teaching for deeper learning research. Names again, please. Do you mean, let me just go back to, I'm just going to, well, there were two areas that research came from. One was from Ofsted's subject inspections recently. The other was, in fact, it's three. One was Ofsted's recent subject inspections. The other was from their initial research into what effective school curricula look like. And the third was, I believe, this one. Let me just go back to this one and I can find you. Here it is. It's called Teaching for Deeper Learning by Jay McTighe and Harvey Silver. And now I'm sure that Karen, I'm volunteering her here, when this is over, will send you that link. But in terms of that deeper learning, the other references that I can point you in the direction of in terms of evidence-informed work are the work, bless him, Tom Sherrington, his most recent book, I think it's done with David Caglioli, which I can't pronounce, is called Walkthroughs. That's full of evidence around getting deeper learning and teaching for deeper learning and strategies you can use in terms of sequencing, which obviously then feeds into your curriculum development. So again, I don't know if that's helped, Jenny. Let me know if there's anything further. Oh, Jenny says, can we put that in the chat? I will endeavour to do that now, Jenny. Let me just transfer. Unfortunately, I can't. I'll type it in. That's what I will do. So that's helped. So Rebecca, you wanted those names in the chat. I'll type it for everybody so everybody can see. It is Jay So that's teaching for deeper learning. And then the other one was Tom Sherrington. And I'm really sorry, but I can't remember the name of his co-writer. But it is walkthroughs. And it's walkthroughs 1. It's the yellow book, which has come out recently. So hopefully that should help. Okay. Right. In terms of this other question then, in terms of how long do you expect the audit process to last? And so how much time do you think should be allocated? It is entirely up to you, Rebecca. You can spend a staff meeting getting an initial response, you know, and it's a bit like the challenge framework. You can look through that and go, well, as a almost of, if you think of de Bono's thinking hats, a sort of my instant reaction is, this is where I think we are with each of those areas, and you can respond to each of them just by giving it a score from 1 to 5 according to the audit. And once you've done that as an initial, people's initial response, you can then say, right, well, there's clearly an issue here in terms of intent. So now let's spend some time looking at, you could take one element at a time within the intent section. Or if you decide that your implementation is an issue from what people have responded, you could take a section of that or a subsection of it. There is no set time. It is entirely up to you as a school how you use that. It's certainly not something, as I say, you can do that initial response straight away, but it's not something that you would say, oh yeah, we've done that, we've ticked that, move on. You get that initial response, and then you dig down deeper into certain elements. And from that, you can develop an action plan, which again could be about your entire curriculum design, or it could be about elements of it. So it feels as if it's a very broad answer, because there is no right or wrong answer with this, other than please don't use it as a tick list and then just put it to one side forever. You can use it as a sort of, as I said, that instinctive reaction initially, and then from that, take the elements that are coming out as something that are causes for concern, but likewise things that you want to respond to and want to celebrate these, because these are developed, you know, clearly areas of strength that we can build on. Okay. So again, Rebecca, is there anything else you want to ask about that one? I think the idea of it is just use, it is a fantastic tool to use to drive improvement in your school. And what it does, first of all, is help you evaluate where you are so that you've got a clear starting point. Okay. Yeah, what I think, in my case, Rebecca, we used it as a complete audit, as in we're starting from scratch, everybody. We did what I said, which was that initial view, and then we took an element at a time and we explored that in a variety of staff meetings. We used it in a different in different forum as well. So we had we gave it to subject leaders to look at on their own as well after that, and dive more deeply into each section from their own point of view. So are there any more questions? I don't think I've missed any, have I? So I think really there's no more questions. Any more questions that you can see, Karen? No. Okay.
No, I think that's everything.
Just to finish off then, I will go back to that final thought for the day. All I can tell you is that from my point of view, as somebody who's led Challenge in 3 different schools and has used, you know, I used the Challenge Award, and I'm now using this particular audit to help turn around one of those schools, but also to carry on improving the one that was actually already quite strong. But I wish I'd had it years ago, because the depth of thinking that it's promoting in all of our schools, and you know it'd be the same in the schools across our trust, is phenomenal, because it allows you to dig really deep down into your curriculum, but with that lens of the more able. So you know that when you've managed to achieve what the audit is guiding you towards, that you've got a fantastic ambitious curriculum that will provide challenge for all learners. So that's it really. So good luck with it, everybody. You know, please give it a go. Watch back so that you can pick up those different elements and have a look at what those different elements look like. And good luck on your more able journeys. And thank you for posing those questions. Okay, thank you very much.